see you.
You can see me? Oh, yay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's get going then. Okay, so, I mean, I sent you the basics. So in case anyone's coming in now, so unfortunately, Ori Goldstein was not feeling well, and and Erica stepped up to the plate. Uh-oh, Erica, you're freezing on me. Are you still there? Oops. No, that's my bathroom. Oops. Hello? Erica, you still there? Why does it keep freezing? Okay, anyway, so Ori wasn't feeling well. Erica here she is. Erica stepped up to the plate at the last minute. She's pinch hitting for us. Thank you so much, Erica. And I'm pinch hitting for Shoshana. And we're all very flexible here.
I would love to meet Shoshana, but that's okay.
Well, you saw her for like a second, right?
Mm-hmm. 1 second, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's start this.
Okay, let's start this. So, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself, tell everybody about you?
I'll do it for the okay.
Has a new Instagram account.
A professional new page. I have a personal page, but this is my professional page. My name is Erica Klein, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker based in the 5 towns. I have a private practice in Cedarhurst, New York, and my clientele is adults. And the issues I deal with are addiction, anxiety, depression, I said before, personality disorders, mood disorders, psychiatric disorders, so basically all the issues. And I'm really excited to be here, even though it was last minute, and I'm going to try my best to give you guys some insight and some knowledge about addiction. And Shoshana gave the questions. Do you want me to start with that, or do you want to start on your own?
Well, why don't we just, I mean, we talked about kind of like an overview of everything. So do you want to just kind of go over, kind of the basics, do you have the notes there? Because I think.
Hold on 1 second.
Sorry, everyone just be patient with us.
Okay, so yes, so basically everybody is susceptible to addiction. Just like addiction is a mental illness, it is an illness, and just like mental illness does not discriminate, neither does addiction. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how poor you are, how successful you are, how religious you are, Jewish, ethnicity, it doesn't matter. Even if you follow God, even if you're, it's a mental illness. A lot of addiction has genetic components to it. So, obviously the more genetic predisposition, the higher chance you have of getting it. A lot of people fall into addiction as a way of coping mechanism, self-soothing. So they're self-medicating their pain, their trauma from abuse, or just, from any trauma and any type of suffering. And everybody has their different drug of choice. And when I say drug, I don't mean drugs. It can be sex, gambling, eating, alcohol. Alcohol is a liquid drug. It's a misconception. People think alcohol is not a drug. Alcohol actually has the highest death rate of substance abuse. So it's funny because it's legal. In the Jewish community, it's so common. I mean, we're basically like encouraged to drink all the time. Am I talking too much?
No.
Okay.
But by the way, I live in Canada, and pot's legal here now also.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. So pot is, marijuana is not as addictive. It's not. I'm not going to go into marijuana right now, but there's no rehab for marijuana. There's rehab for alcohol. You can die if you don't if you don't go off alcohol properly. You cannot just get sober yourself from alcohol if you're a real addict. And should I talk about the difference between addiction and abuse right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So people think that addiction, I drink, I have a cup of wine every day. I have a few shots on Shabbos. Am I an addict? You're not an addict. Addict is defined by frequency, intensity, duration. How much are you doing it? what's happening when you do it. Are you getting blackout drunk? And how long have you been drinking? How long have you been using? How long have you been gambling, eating, etc.? How is it impacting your life? So intensity. Is your relationship being impacted? Is your family being impacted? Is your job? Are you able to function in mainstream society while using this drug? Are you addicted to it, or are you just abusing it? If you're addicted to it, chances are you're going to be failing in some part of your life. Just like with any mental illness, you know, we all have pathologies, so we can all feel anxious, we can all feel depressed. When does it become a disorder? It becomes a disorder when we're not functioning in our society in what we're supposed to be doing. So if our anxiety is stopping us from going to work, or stopping us from being in a relationship, or impacting our family, taking care of our kids, then it becomes a disorder. So that is how you define addiction. It's the same way. How much is it impacting you?
What if it helps you? I knew somebody sent in a question, like what about drinking wine with while you're helping your kids with homework, because it's like most stressful time of the day. So so what if, you know, if it helps in your day, is that not an addiction?
Of course it's not an addiction. No, of course. Then there's nothing wrong with, I have a cup of sangria at dinner time all the time. It's great. It's a de-stressor. Again, it's legal. You can use nothing. I mean, it's in moderation. Alcohol. I'm not talking about illegal substances, but food, right? Food makes me happy, right? Whatever it is, anything you eat, if it makes you happy, what's wrong with it? But it's not an addiction. It's not impacting your ability to love, work, function in society, right? So yes, sorry, I feel like I should go on to the next question. So no, it's not.
No, I like this line of
I lost my thought, but that's okay. Maybe somebody will help me get back on that. By the way, you guys, you can, you know, post questions if you want, comments. Falling into the trap. Who's susceptible? It's hard to tell. Definitely trauma victims, people who've have severe abuse, obviously role modeling. If you have a father, a brother, an uncle, a sibling, a parent. You know, people ask, like, is it peer pressure? Can you become an addict just on peer pressure? No, you can't become an addict just on peer pressure. Yes, you can use drugs through peer pressure, and it will introduce you to drugs. Or I feel like we're talking a lot about drugs. If that's an issue, then we can go on to something else. Hi, Mary. But you're not going to become an addict if you try something just because you went for peer pressure. Addiction it's a mental illness, and you're susceptible to it, obviously, and some of us won't try it even though we're surrounded by friends, but others will, and that the reason being is they're trying to self-soothe, they're trying to self-medicate. They need that craving, they're addicted. Any thoughts, Rebecca?
I was I guess there's a difference between teens and adults. I was actually just my kids go to Fasman Yeshiva in Skokie in Chicago.
Okay, I'm gonna make believe I know what that is. Okay.
Sorry?
I said I'll make believe I know what that is. I'm a New Yorker.
Oh yeah, there's nothing outside of New York, but there is a place called Chicago. And in Chicago, there's there's a yeshiva, and we actually just listened to I'm so proud to be a parent there, because they're very proactive, and they work with madrigos.
They spoke about drugs.
Yeah, I mean they talked about drinking before Purim, and and drugs a little bit, and they brought in a speaker. It was amazing, and I mean obviously I'm not there, so they had like a live stream that we could dial into, like that we could call into. It was amazing, and Madrigos does amazing work in Chicago. But they were just.
How old are your children? Hi, Ricky. How old are your children?
I have a senior graduating high school this year. And God willing, and I have another son who's finishing 10th grade.
Okay, so this is a great time to have this conversation, because your sons may get drunk a lot, but it doesn't mean they're addicts. It means that they're mature.
I mean, I could be in denial, but I don't think my kids drink. But no, no, thank God. You know, we talk a lot. We're pretty open. Hopefully, they're not going to kill me for talking on Instagram about them. But anyways,
they don't have a choice.
But anyways, no, I did talk to them about it because they kind of gave a whole. What to talk to, how to talk to your kids, and it was great. But something that really, like, I don't think I thought about it before was they were saying how doing drugs as an adult, like, I think after the age of 26 is very different than doing drugs as a teenager, especially if you have a history of mental illness in the family.
That's correct. Were they saying that it's worse to do drugs as an adult?
Yeah, they were saying that that teenagers, that there's certain brain neurons and things that aren't fully developed.
It's really interesting that. Okay, so actually, female brains are developed at an earlier age than males, and don't quote me on it, but I think females by 18, their brains, impulse control brains, are fully developed, and I think by males it's 21, which is funny because males are we're driving at 18, 16, 17, and the impulse control, that part of the brain is not fully developed and fully mature. But yeah, we're getting into a car, but you can't smoke, you can't drink, right? Which is great. But in the Jewish community, it's kind of hard to say, oh, my son's not picking up a drink before 21, obviously in other communities, but here it's like almost encouraged, like in the shuls and, Purim. So yes, the reason why drinking as an adult, using substances as an adult is worse because it's normal. It's normal for teens to take risks. It's normal for teens to be irresponsible. It's normal for teens to fall into peer pressures and to try things out and make mistakes. And your kids will make mistakes as much as you. The main thing is to always keep it open, keep it positive, unconditional. You can come to me. It's okay. It's not the worst thing. You'll learn from it. I'll help you. I'll support you. But as an adult, people who are doing that, they're you want to question, why are they doing such irresponsible things? Why are they taking such big risks? What are they trying to help? What are they trying to soothe? What's the reason behind it?
Yeah, and
Does that make sense?
I guess are they more when they're? I mean, I couldn't send in questions from where I was, but would teenagers be more
would you go
susceptible?
bungee jumping?
Sorry?
Would you go bungee jumping right now at your age?
I think I would break my back.
Would you go? Meaning, would you go? Would you take such a risk? No.
I would for sure do it as a teenager.
Of course, and so would I.
Oh yeah.
So
I see Rachel Huffman's there. I think we might have done that. We might have done that together in high school. Did we, Rachel?
Look, as an adult, teenagers do stupid things. Teenagers do dangerous things, but that's because their brains are not fully developed. As an adult, your brain is developed, and if you're doing those things, you wonder why, and there's something going on. Now, we can use substances and we can drink or do things, and it doesn't have to be an addiction. You can be abusing and still be, ruining your life. But there's a very big difference between abuse and addiction. So I just wanted to be clear because I feel like people say, oh, my husband's an addict. And, maybe you just have to have an open conversation about him, being more aware of how much he drinks on Shabbos, but it doesn't mean he's an addict.
Right.
She said you did a lot of other dumb stuff, so she's outing you.
Yeah, we for sure did. Hopefully my kids aren't on here. They might be.
Can everyone relate in some way? I think so. I hope so. I think anyone that says they don't know an addict, I think they're either extremely self-absorbed or they're just they're in denial or they're just lacking knowledge of what an addict is. Shoshana, actually, I loved what she said. She said, don't come just because you're an addict. Come because we all need to learn how to help addiction. We all need to learn how to recognize addiction. We all can learn from addiction, and it doesn't mean, I don't, it's not going to happen to me. I mean, there's so many people in our life, you never know, and it's important. Any part of mental mental health awareness that you can have and you can learn, and it's so important. The more we know, the more we're prepared for, the more, I'm not finding my words, but knowledge is power. We need to know. We can't stick ourselves and say, oh, I don't want to know about bipolar disorder because I don't know anyone at Chas Shalom. I don't want it to happen to me or anyone in my family. No.
You probably have to know like a dozen people.
Exactly. We have to know about mental illness. We have to know about addiction, especially. We need to know about it. Hi, Elisa. Hi, Tamara. Yes.
Elisa, she's on next week, everybody. Elisa Tropper.
That's awesome. I can't wait. Hi, Elisa Tropper.
Everybody wants to know CBT next week. Elisa will be talking about self-regulation and, just in time for Purim, about drinking. We'll continue this conversation with Elisa next week about, moderation.
That's great. Was everyone able to hear me, or was my hand covering my speaker?
We have lots of hearts, so I'm sure that everybody heard you.
Oh, okay. Supporting loved ones. Do not give them money to use. Do not let them sleep over if they are, I'm trying to think of extreme example. I'm a little bit extreme, but don't enable them. We know when we're enabling our loved ones. Do not enable your loved ones. You can love them, you can support them, but just like you won't enable your child when they're acting out, or especially a teenager when you know they've crossed boundaries, and you're not going to enable them, but you still love them unconditionally, you are not supporting your loved one, friend, coworker, addict by enabling them. You can support them by giving them information, by telling them it's not too late, and by being there for them, but don't enable them.
And that's when the behaviors get destructive, right? Like, it's not, kiddish club and, coming home and taking a nap. That's not like a disruptive behavior, but, when it gets to the point where, you're not functioning on Shabbos, then,
okay, but right. So if the spouse is coming home and missing every Shabbos meal, I would not apologize for him to my children, right? I would have him deal with it. I wouldn't clean up his vomit. I'm sorry. I wouldn't pay for his tickets. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Codependency, yes. I'm sure everybody knows about the 12-step program. It's great. There's so many different programs besides for NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and AA. There's SA, there's OA, there's, I think, forgot the name for gambling, but there's so many. And then there's a 12-step program called Al-Anon Anonymous, and it's for codependent. It's for basically families, loved ones, spouses, anyone that you're close to. So people who are close to addicts and who are being impacted by them. And it's really, really great support system because sometimes it's not easy to leave a relationship. And sometimes you can't leave your son, you can't leave your daughter. I can't tell you to get divorced. That's something you have to make that decision. So that's, if you're staying in this marriage and this person's clean or they're relapsing, Al-Anon Anonymous is a great support. Get support groups. Unfortunately, rock bottom can be really devastating for us to watch as loved ones. But that's where they have to get to in order to become clean and be motivated. Today, I think the From community is becoming a lot more aware, and there's so much out there as far as resources, so many rehabilitation centers, and I'm sure, unfortunately, people who have been through that are aware of it. Getting a thumbs up from Leah, so that's great. Muffins and Mom Parenting, hi.
Oh, hi.
Sorry, my laptop's about to die. But
just on the lines of what you were saying, so I was actually talking to somebody the other day about kind of not, it's not really your job to fix other people's problems anyways, right? Like, even if it's not about
that's addiction. Setting good boundaries. Right, but with addiction, it could be
to the codependency thing, right? Like, you kind of have to own your own problems. And when,
right.
Even with
we care, we see them suffering, we care, but we have to know that we cannot change them. And we're just going to be hurting ourselves every time we see them. I'm not sure, I feel like we're a lot referring to a lot of substances, but there's the gambling part of it. People's lives People have gambled their life savings, their homes. You can't, I mean, if you're willing to stay, then you have to wait for them to hit the rock bottom. Addiction is a really tough thing to live with, for the person going through it and for the person that is, the partner, the spouse, the child. It's hard. It's tough.
And I think somebody sent in a question about dealing with, like, as an adult, if you're dealing with a parent who, we talked about this, as a functioning alcoholic. So you have a comment about that.
So what does a functioning alcoholic mean? If they're functioning, then they're not addicted, right? So I feel like functioning alcoholic just means that, like, I know about it, they're not functioning, but maybe the rest of the world doesn't know about it, or I hope the rest of the world doesn't know about it. But I hate the word functioning alcoholic. If you're addicted to alcohol, you're not functioning, okay? You're messing up somewhere, somehow, and it's really, really, really ruining your life in some way. I'm sure, people have done horrific things while drunk. So if they're just drinking a little too much on the daily, they're not getting drunk, but it's kind of annoying you, then they're not an alcoholic. They're just doing a behavior that you don't enjoy, and it's not really contributing to your space in a positive way, but they're not an addict. So obviously there's always behaviors that can annoy us and disrupt the relationship or disrupt the home, but I just want to point out it's not an addiction. Okay, that's just important for everyone to be aware of. So there's other ways of helping it. You can be in therapy for that and help it, but it's not an addiction.
So if somebody, is anybody susceptible? That was another question. Is everybody susceptible, or is it just
so we started the live
history and
yes. Okay. So addiction has a very strong genetic factor, and obviously the more addicts you have in your family, the more likely you are to become addicted to a substance if you're using it as a coping mechanism. So a lot of people use substances as coping mechanisms, but they don't necessarily become addicted to it, right? There are many people using drugs, but they're not addicted to it. So, once you start using as a coping mechanism and there's genetic predisposition, there are chances are that you will suffer from the same disease as your family, grandparent, uncle. And whenever I do intakes for clients who come in and they have addiction, I always ask them who in your family is using, who in your family has history. And a lot of times they don't know, but then if we go back and we say the grandfather, we say, you know what? My dad never spoke to him. Where was your grandfather? Maybe he was the addict. We don't know. So it's important to talk about the family history. But again, I said in the other live that we got cut off, there's no discriminating when it comes to addiction because it's a mental illness. And just like you see depression, anxiety, OCD, you see all these mental illness throughout every socioeconomic status, every social status, every gender, religion, race. It doesn't matter, ethnicity. It doesn't matter how religious you are. People say, but he's so from, she's so from. It's an illness. They want to be from. Okay, I'm trying to say that bad people comes in all shapes and forms. Not bad, sorry. Bad behaviors can be in the most religious person. It's an addiction. It's a bad behavior. It doesn't mean that the person doesn't want to follow the path and have a higher power and be spiritual. It just means that they're struggling and they're not perfect. And this is something they struggle with more. And it's great that they still are religious and they're still trying to have morals and values and stick to other things besides for this little aspect that they're kind of failing in. But it doesn't mean just because someone's from that they're not going to be an addict. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
There were more questions, but if anybody in the crowd there wants to ask questions, you can ask on behalf of friends, family, You
did ask me some questions that were great. I didn't write them down.
I can look. It just might take me a few seconds, so maybe talk while
Okay, hi everyone, thanks for joining. Addiction is a mental illness. Addiction is hard to live with. There is help. There always has to be a plan for relapse. Support system helps. Having family members there is a huge factor in helping them stay sober, stay clean, one day at a time, obviously, 1 hour at a time. Addiction, the 12-step program is something that I really believe in, and I really believe that you have to be married to it in order to stay clean. And it's not something that you can say, you know what, there's no cure. You can't be like, oh, I'm clean for 10 years. No, I can take a drink, or I'm clean for 10 years, I can, use. It doesn't work like that. You have to keep on going through the 12 steps and keep on trying to stay sober, and you can't try a little bit if you're an addict. You have to stay clean.
Okay, I'm having a hard time with trying to find it, so maybe I'll try to remember.
Okay, I just find it interesting that nobody has any questions.
Well, you are covering a lot.
Is there not a lot of? Okay, I hope so. I don't know. I wish somebody would comment. My dad's doctor had told him multiple times that he needs to stop drinking. He won't. He has high functioning ABD. Oh, and works as an accountant. How can I help him? Give him education. Explain to him that it's a disease. Be there for him. Don't enable him. Don't let him deny. Reality test, guys. We got a reality test. When someone is telling us something that doesn't seem realistic, and you know that they're just in denial, you got a reality test. Gently reality test them. You're not doing them a favor to say you're right, you're not an addict. No, you have to help them. You have to educate them, and give them resources. Tell them to join a support group. But please don't minimize their illness. Obviously, don't try to control it, but try not to minimize it and always be realistic. Does that answer your question? What are views on medication-assisted treatment? So once they're clean, obviously, if they need medication for just helping them with their mood lability, their anxiety, their depression, their emotional regulation, so then yes. Addiction is very comorbid. There's always going to be co-occurring disorders connected to it. Most people who are addicts are not happy and are struggling with something emotionally. So yes, if they need medication for something else, then yes. How do you get past the pain of watching and close one's self-destruct? Support, Al-Anon Anonymous, individual therapy, forgiveness, acceptance. Watching any loved one go through emotional, mental health pain is hard, but we can't, behavior boost asked, we can't, it's their destruction. Like you said, it's self-destructing. There's nothing we could do sometimes, and they just have to go through it and hit rock bottom. Suboxone is great. Methadone is great. Suboxone is a great thing that it's a great option for people to keep at home if they know that they have a loved one that is using, and it can really save lives. I've heard of many stories. Methadone can really help. It is a clinic that you have to be on, you got to taper off it slowly, but it's a great program. I have a lot of clients that are still on it. Why are addicts always so in denial? What if they get angry at you when you tell them the reality? They get angry. I mean,
can I make a comment on that one? I think we're all in denial about something.
Yeah, the reason why they're getting angry is because they're getting defensive, right?
I don't think it's I don't think it's unique to addicts. I think we're all in denial, and kind of.
Are you asking about violence? Don't approach an addict when they're high, okay? Don't try to have a rational conversation when the person is high. I can't hear you.
Or angry. You can't have a conversation
or
who's angry either.
Right. But a great question, Shira. Was there any other questions I missed? How can you help a loved one with addiction without hurting them? Hurting them how? Emotionally? It hurts. It hurts to tell someone they need to get help. It also hurts to tell somebody that's depressed that they need to get help. These are hard conversations, guys. And that's why it's so important that we have to be aware and we have to break the stigma, because the less we stigmatize it, sorry, my kids are crying.
It's authentic.
Somebody hit somebody there. I don't know what happened. Um, where am I up to? The more we say we are aware of how rampant it is and how it's okay, and there are people walking, breathing, living among us. Just a second, not right now. Can you go figure it out? Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, we got back up. I think my husband was listening in his car.
It's okay. I think Shoshana's probably dealing with her kid. That's why I came on.
But I wanted to come back and say, you know, I feel like a lot of times the addicts are a little more compassionate to themselves about the fact that they have an addiction, but they're so worried about being judged by others. And I think that we really have to come at them in an accepting way. We're not mad at people who are depressed. We're not mad at people who have bipolar disorder. We're not mad at people who have OCD. Why be mad at them? Yes, they're going to hurt us, but if you want to help them, you have to show compassion, acceptance, unconditional love. And I think that there may be less of a reason for them to be angry if you're coming to them in an angle of, I want to support you with this, and it's okay, and I'm aware of it, but I know that you probably need me right now. So they don't have to always be angry if they're not worried about your judgment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. On that same, on a similar note, I remember somebody asked me if alcoholism, isn't it a choice?
Alcoholism, addiction? No, it's not a choice. I mean, yes, they chose that substance, but no, addiction is a mental illness. You don't choose to become addicted. You choose to start a negative way of coping, a poor choice, a coping skill, a self-soothing skill. It's you're self-medicating. So yes, you do choose when you pick up that drink, but you don't choose to become addicted to it. You choose not to get help. You choose not to realize it's an illness. You choose not to go to rehab. That's a choice. But you don't choose to struggle. When somebody has depression, they choose not to go on medication, right? They don't choose to feel suicidal. They choose what to do about it. They choose how to get help, but they're not choosing to have those feelings. Okay, people with mental illness are not choosing to struggle with their mind, to struggle internally, to struggle, you know, how it impacts them and with their behaviors. The only choice they're making is, okay, they're aware, I have an issue, what am I going to do about it? And a lot of times it's not so simple. A lot of times it's hard for them to do something about it. And that's where we could step up and try to help them become aware. But with addiction, a lot of times they do have to reach their rock bottom. Hopefully rock bottom isn't death. I'm sorry to be so real about it. And there is relapse. There's always relapse with addiction. So anyone dating right now, anyone dating someone that's 5 years clean, I want you to be aware this is lifelong, just like any other mental health illness. If they are on medication and they're okay, it's lifelong though. They have to keep managing the illness. So it is a lifelong commitment. And there are some amazing, amazing, amazing people who have addiction and are clean for many years, and they're amazing people and they're worthy of love and they're worthy of relationships and they're doing great, but their loved ones know that it is a lifelong commitment. Okay, but that's with anyone you marry, any child you bring up, there's always going to be stuff that are lifelong, and you can't just, you know, say, oh, it's hard, make it go away. But I just want people to be aware that someone is clean for 5 years, it doesn't mean they're clean for life. Okay, and they just have to prepare for that. You got to know that. And it's that's also really not fair. Yeah, and I think it's also not fair on the addict. Like, it's not fair to the addict for you to say, oh, well, you were clean for 2 years. But you know I'm an addict. Like, I'm not, if anyone's tuning in, I'm not an addict. But, like, you knew that. You knew that going in, you know. You knew I suffer. You knew this person was suffering. They were open with you that they were suffering with this mental health disorder. So, and they were managing it. They were going to the psychiatrist. They were on meds. They were in therapy. They were getting the support. But it's a struggle. So if they slip up or they have a relapse, you can't judge them. You got to stick with them.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Okay.
I mean, people have. It's pretty rampant in all communities. This is another thing that they said in Madrigos, that when Madrigos was speaking, that whatever is happening in the broader community is happening in the same percentage in our community.
Correct. Because we are a much smaller community, but it's still the same percentage, right? So for every five and five,
so we're not immune the same way that the broader community is not immune, and we have to be just as aware as anybody else is. Yeah.
Mental illness is so rampant. Addiction is just another mental illness. I think that Project Proactive is great. I think you're being really proactive and bringing awareness, and I think that it's refreshing because so many of us need that validation to say, people try to say, oh, everything's fine. People just try to be in denial about it because it's not impacting them directly, but it's impacting so many of us in so many different ways. And a lot of times we blame it on behaviors and this person's stubborn, this person's selfish. People are struggling. We're struggling. There's a lot of pain and we're struggling. And I think people will get help better if they realize that they're not bad. It's just they're struggling.
Yeah. And there's like so many amazing supports out there. Like, as you mentioned before, for all the people that weren't on before, there's organizations, there's therapists, there's
and group work is so important for addiction. Communities are so important for addiction, and again, family is very important.
As you said, breaking the stigma is
right. So somebody just asked, what are some ways we as a community can destigmatize this? Come on this live, Project Proactive, Madrigos.
And we're on Facebook now, so if
That's
anybody
great.
is on Facebook and not on Instagram, if you could invite people to the page, it will reach further and more people can watch these lives. They're really important. And you can send us suggestions.
If anyone has any
love feedback.
If anyone has any questions and they're just, it's a little too personal for them to post on here, feel free to message me or Project Proactive. My username, I think, is Erica Klein, LCSW. I'm just looking. I think there was another question. What if he doesn't want to be religious, but it's only due to the addiction? Okay, so with addiction comes other struggles, and it's just another factor of the addiction. A lot of times it's really hard to stay religious because of all the judgment and a lot of bad self-esteem. They feel worthless. A lot of them feel worthless, and they feel like, if I failed in this way, I can't, how could I keep Shabbos? How could I be from? How could I daven? I'm doing all these bad things. It's hard, and I'm just going to say it's a journey. Don't give up. It's a journey, and sometimes it just goes along with it. People lose a lot when they fall into addiction, and part of it can be religion. But I do. Huh?
Sorry, I wanted to, before you finish, I just wanted to say something. We one time had an NCSY group sleep at our house, and one of the kids, one of the advisors was telling us that he didn't want to be religious when he was in high school. His family's like super religious from a pretty well-known rabbi family, and he now he was an advisor and becoming religious again, and he said that for him the most impactful thing for him was just that his parents loved him unconditionally and they didn't judge, and they when he decided not to be Shomer Shabbos and he decided not to keep kosher, they just, they gave him a hug and they said, I love you. And they, they didn't really, and I think that that's pretty much the only hope of having a mentally healthy person that's suffering with mental illness, to just show love and support unconditionally. Am I wrong? I don't.
You literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to say that when you started talking.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That the only way to save them is to say it's okay. You can still be from and be an addict. Just because you're in the throes of your addiction, it doesn't mean that you can't be from. It doesn't mean that you can't, like I said, illness and pathologies come in all religions. You can be religious and have pathologies that really destroy you and distract you, but you can still be Jewish and you can still daven to God. I remember I was talking to someone, and he was, he was using a lot and it was impacting his marriage. And he's like, and we ended the conversation. I said, why don't you just, pray, send a prayer. He's like, Erica, I haven't prayed in 20 years. I'm like, so? God doesn't care. That keeping track. Just talk to him, pray to him, and he thanked me for that. He said, thank you for giving me permission to connect to God, even though I feel like I'm not worthy of connection. There's no such a thing. We all can connect. It doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter where we fall in. It doesn't matter what we're struggling with. We're all welcome. Okay.
And that's the 12-step programs is a lot about.
Right. You have to believe in a higher power, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I've seen a lot of people who, not even in the Jewish community, who have become spiritual and religious after they become clean. It's amazing. But I wanted to say what you were saying along the lines of, it's so important to tell, again, we are not in control somebody's trying to send me a message. We're not in control of helping them, we're not in control of them becoming clean or not, but we are in control of our reaction to them. We do have to support them. We do have to say, you can still be from, you can still go to shul, you can still keep Shabbos. I'm sorry if I'm making it sound like it's only males, totally not. You can still be a mother, and you can still be part of us, even though you're struggling with this, because it's another mental illness. And just because you're manic, it doesn't mean you can't be from. And just because you're struggling with extreme obsessions and compulsions, it doesn't mean that you can't be welcome and you are not welcome. And you have to, parents have to continue the love and support, and not in the condition that they'll come back, because they may not come back, and that's okay still, because that's their struggle and that's just part of their illness, and that's part of, that just goes along with it. And I wanted to say, when someone says, oh, I'm an addict, and why does she or he have to leave their religion? It goes along. There's a lot of depression there too. Okay, there's a lot of depression. People are afraid. People are prideful. People are scared to be from and be an addict. It's hard.
There's also a lot of stigma. Like, it's
right.
not so comfortable sometimes.
There's no room, right? And I want there to be room. I want there to be room for everybody. There should be room for all of us, okay? It doesn't matter what we're struggling with. There is room. There's room for everybody. It's so important.
It's like amazing that everybody has joined us, because, you're part of the change, right?
Yes, yes. And I wanted to say what Shoshana was saying. It's so important to say, it doesn't discriminate. It's not going to happen to me. BS. You have no idea. I don't know how old you are, but life happens. Stuff happens. You don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know what you'll be faced with. You don't know who's going to come into your life. Everybody struggles with something, and we all have to be aware about addiction. And I kind of would question why you're so, why you don't want to know. Like, why don't you want to know? Isn't it empowering? Don't you want to have that knowledge?
That's part of the denial thing that came up before.
Right.
Everyone has.
But what are you afraid of?
Issues.
You're going to catch addiction because now you know about it? Maybe you'll be aware that you're an addict.
Better at hiding it, right? Like, everyone has something.
Yes,
right?
We all have something. We're human. Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Erica, and I'm a human being.
Me too. Hi.
I'm just,
well, you are a human being that saved us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And I really appreciate it. And everybody follow Erica.
Thank you.
On
Instagram.
LCSW.
Thank you.
Erica
I
Klein.
really enjoyed being here tonight, and I hope that I gave some people support, some validation, some insight, some knowledge. I didn't really prep for it. You called me like 20 minutes before, and I finished homework and showers, but I'm really happy that I was able to come on here tonight. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for coming. And please don't forget to help us grow on Facebook. We're doing a good job on Instagram, but you can always help. And, we're there to highlight, therapists. If there's somebody that you want us to bring on our live, we'd love to highlight them, and just reach out. And yeah,
Reach out.
reach out.
Not good.
Okay.
It's not good to suffer in isolation. Are you going to save this?
I will definitely try.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be saved for the next 24 hours at least, and then hopefully I'll be able to record it.
Okay, great. Now I get to analyze myself. Have a good night.
Uh-oh. No, we have a rule. You're not allowed to watch.
Oh, shoot. Okay. I'm just in here.
No. You can't. It's just between me and Shoshana. We have like our own, like.
I like that rule.
Don't. All right.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye.